Captain Daeho Kim stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the vast space station called Kepler Prime. The station spun slowly in front of them, its lights blinking like stars. Around it, dozens of ships from different worlds waited there. "Turn to dock. Sir, the Etherian fleet is coming in on the port side," said Lieutenant Sun-Hee Lee. She pointed to her screen, where 12 sleek, silver ships moved in perfect formation. Each ship was smooth and shiny like polished metal reflecting the station's lights. Daeho nodded and looked at his own ship's reflection in the viewport. The Handbox Pride looked nothing like those elegant vessels. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals, some gray, some blue, some even red from an old mining rig they had salvaged. Extra parts stuck out at odd angles. Pipes ran along the outside where normally they would be hidden inside. Antennae and sensors poked out like the spines of a strange metal creature. "We look like a flying junkyard next to them," said Commander Taemin Lee from his engineering station. He was Sun-Hee's older brother and took care of all the ship's systems. "Maybe," said Daeho. "But we fly, don't we?" The Handbox Pride moved toward the docking bay with a slight wobble. The ship's engines made an odd humming sound, like an old truck climbing a hill. Other human ships around them looked similar, cobbled together from whatever parts they could find. The Iron Rabbit had mining laser arrays stuck to its sides. The Clever Fox was built around an old cargo container, with engines and life support added later. Inside Kepler Prime, Admiral So Young Park waited in the main conference room. She wore her best uniform, but it looked simple compared to the fancy clothes of other species. The room was huge, with a round table that could seat 50 beings from different worlds. The Etherian delegation entered first. They moved with grace, their tall bodies covered in flowing robes that seemed to shimmer like water. Admiral Velthara led them, her forearms moving in complex gestures as she spoke to her assistants. Her skin was pale blue, and her large eyes looked like liquid mercury. "Admiral Park," Velthara said, her voice musical but cold. "We welcome this opportunity to speak with your people." So Young stood and bowed politely. "Admiral Velthara, we are honored by your presence." Velthara's eyes moved to the screens around the room, showing views of the ships outside. When she saw the human vessels, her expression changed. Her eyes narrowed, and what might have been amusement flickered across her face. "Those are your warships?" she asked, pointing with one of her 4 hands. "Yes, they are part of our fleet," So Young replied carefully. Velthara made a sound that could have been laughter. The other Etherians joined in, creating a chorus of tinkling notes. "They appear to be, how do you say it in your language, trash heaps? Refuse bins with engines?" So Young felt her cheeks grow warm, but kept her expression calm. "They may not look elegant, but they serve us well." "Serve you well?" Velthara stood, her tall frame towering over the human admiral. "My child, your ships look like they were assembled from the garbage of a dozen civilizations. Do you truly expect to defend yourselves with such creative engineering?" The word engineering sounded like an insult the way she said it, dripping with disdain. Another Etherian stepped forward. "Our scans show that your vessels are indeed constructed from salvaged components. Mining equipment, cargo containers, even what appears to be restaurant kitchen units. We use what we can find," So Young admitted. "Humanity believes in making things work, no matter their origin." Velthara walked to one of the screens, her robes flowing behind her. "Look at this monstrosity," she said, pointing to the Handbox Pride. "Those external pipes should be internal. Those sensors are placed inefficiently. That hull plating is clearly from at least 6 different ships." She turned back to So Young with a smile that wasn't friendly. "And you believe such creations can stand against proper warships?" Meanwhile, on the Handbox Pride, Dr. Su-Jin Yang worked in her small laboratory. She was a xenobiologist, studying alien life forms. But today, she was doing something different. Her scanners were pointed not at life forms, but at the Etherian ships. "Interesting," she muttered, looking at her readings. The Etherian ships were beautiful, yes, but they were also scanning the human vessels. Every few seconds, a faint energy, Pulse would reach out from their ships, gathering information. She tapped her communicator. "Captain, this is Dr. Yang. The Etherians are scanning us during the talks." "I see," came Daeho's voice. "What kind of scans?" "Weapon systems, power cores, structural integrity. They're making a complete map of our ships." Back in the conference room, the talks had grown more tense. Velthara had proposed the terms of their trade agreement. The Etherians wanted exclusive rights to mine the Proxima Belt, a region rich in rare minerals. In exchange, they would allow basic trade between their species. "Those terms are not acceptable," So Young said. "The Proxima Belt has human mining stations." "Yes, we've seen them," Velthara replied smoothly. "Small, inefficient operations. We propose to upgrade the region." "And are people already there?" "They may evacuate, or they may choose to serve our mining operations in a labor capacity." So Young stood slowly. "You're talking about taking our territory by force." "Force?" Velthara looked surprised. "We speak of cleaning up. Your presence in the belt is temporary anyway. Your ships," she gestured dismissively at the screens, "cannot possibly defend such a large area." The human admiral looked at the images of her fleet again. The ships did look strange, even to her, but she knew something the Etherians didn't. She had seen those junk heaps in action. "Admiral Velthara," she said quietly, "you should not judge by appearances alone." Velthara laughed again, the sound like breaking glass. "My dear Admiral, we have scanners that can count the rivets on your ships. We know exactly what they can and cannot do." She leaned forward across the table. "Your species has courage, I will grant you that. Building ships from scrap, venturing into space with such primitive technology. But courage cannot replace proper engineering." On her ship, Sun-Hee Lee watched the Etherian vessels on her tactical display. They moved in perfect formation, their hulls unmarked and pristine. Each ship was identical to the others, as if they had come from the same factory. "Just yesterday." "Brother," she said to Taemin, "have you ever seen anything so perfect?" Taemin grunted. "Perfect, maybe. But look how they all move exactly the same way, like a school of fish. Or drones following a program." "Exactly." The talks ended without agreement. As the delegations prepared to leave, Velthara approached. "So young one last time, Admiral," she said softly. "We offer you one more chance. Withdraw from the Proxima Belt voluntarily, and we will allow your people to find other homes. Refuse, and we will remove you ourselves." "And if we resist?" Velthara's forearms spread wide. "With those ships? My dear, it would be like throwing pebbles at a storm. Your courage is admirable, but reality is reality." As the Etherians left, So Young felt a cold knot in her stomach. The alien admiral was right about one thing. The human ships did look like junk, but she hoped Velthara would learn what many others had discovered too late. Humans had a talent for making junk fight like tigers. The conference ended with no peace and a war that both sides now knew was coming. As the ships began to leave, Kepler Prime, Dr. Yang made one final scan of the departing Etherian fleet. What she found made her smile grimly. Their beautiful ships had a weakness. Now all they had to do was survive long enough to use it. 3 days after the failed talks at Kepler Prime, Captain Daeho Kim sat in the communications room of the Handbox Pride. In front of him, dozens of holographic faces floated in the air, captains and commanders from across the human fleet. They were using quantum entanglement communicators, devices that most aliens thought were impossible for humans to build. "Report," Daeho said simply. Lieutenant Commander Woo-Sung Choi appeared first. His face was tired with dark circles under his eyes. "Sir, our spies at the border confirm it. The Etherians are gathering a strike fleet near the Tau Ceti system. At least 30 ships, maybe more." "Types?" asked Captain Hyunai Nam of the Taekwondo Spirit. Her ship was one of the larger human vessels built around the hull of an old space liner. 12 heavy cruisers, 20 light cruisers, and support ships, Woo-Sung replied. All newer models, all looking for a fight. Captain Dong Wu-an's face joined the group. His ship, the Silent Hammer, was a converted mining vessel that specialized in stealth operations. My scouts report they're moving toward the Proxima Belt. They expect to be there in 10 days. Daeho rubbed his chin. 32 ships against our 15, and theirs are bigger and newer. On paper, said Commander Taemin Lee, who was sitting nearby. But paper doesn't fly in space. The holographic face of Dr. Su Jin Yang flickered to life. Captain, I've completed my analysis of the Etherian ships. There's something you all need to know. Everyone leaned forward. Dr. Yang rarely spoke during fleet meetings unless it was important. Their ships use biological neural networks, she explained. Living computers that grow inside their hulls. It makes them very smart and very fast, but it also gives them a weakness. What kind of weakness? Asked Captain Nam. These biosystems operate on specific electromagnetic frequencies, if you could hit them with the right kind of pulse. Dr. Yang's eyes gleamed. Their beautiful ships might become very expensive floating rocks. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Chief Petty, Officer Byung-ho Kang, spoke up. He was the fleet's master salvage specialist known for fixing impossible things. That's interesting, Doc, but first we need to survive long enough to use it. Exactly, said Daeho. Which brings us to why we're here. We need a plan. Captain Hyune Nam cleared her throat. I have an idea. It's crazy, but it might work. Let's hear it, said Daeho. We use their arrogance against them. They think our ships are junk, right? So let's make them think we're even worse than they imagined. A slow smile spread across Daeho's face. Go on. We make our ships look like they're falling apart. Vent atmosphere here and there. Let some lights flicker. Trail some debris. Make them think we're barely holding together. Commander Taemin Lee sat up straighter. And when they come in close for an easy kill, we show them what human junk can really do. Finished Captain Nam. Lieutenant Commander Wu Sung nodded. We'll need to make it believable. The Etherians will scan us before they attack. Leave that to me, said Chief Byung-ho Kang. I know how to make a ship look broken while keeping it fighting fit. We'll call it Project Magpie. Magpie? Asked Captain An. Those birds that collect shiny things, Byung-ho explained. We're going to collect some shiny Etherian ships. Over the next week, the human fleet transformed itself. Chief Byung-ho Kang worked like a man possessed, moving between ships with his teams of specialists. They made changes that seemed insane to outside observers. On the Hanbok's Pride, they installed fake plasma leaks that would spray harmless colored gas. They rigged lights to flicker in patterns that looked like power failures. They even added pieces of old hull plating that would fall off on command, making the ship look like it was literally coming apart. But underneath these cosmetic changes, real improvements were being made. Commander Taemin Lee worked 18-hour days, upgrading weapon systems and strengthening shields. The ship's main reactor was modified to run at 120% capacity, something that should have been impossible, but Taemin made it work. How? Asked his sister Sun Hee when she saw the readings. I took the safety systems from a mining rig and crossed them with life support backups from a hospital ship, Taemin explained, wiping grease from his hands. Don't ask me why it works. It just does. On the Silent Hammer, Captain Dong Wu-an watched his engineers install new stealth equipment. His ship already looked like an asteroid when it wanted to, but now it could hide even better. The trick, explained his chief engineer, is to make the ship look like junk on scanners. The Etherians won't even look twice at us. The Taekwondo Spirit underwent the most dramatic changes. Captain Nam ordered fake cargo containers welded to the hull, making her cruiser look like a simple freighter. But inside those containers were weapons batteries powerful enough to punch through heavy armor. It's like wearing a disguise to a masquerade ball, she told her crew. Except our costume shoots back. Dr. Yang spent her time working on something she called the surprise. She and her team of xenobiologists studied every Etherian ship scan they could find, mapping the exact frequencies their bioneural networks used. It's like finding the right key to a lock, she explained to Captain Daeho. Hit them with exactly the right electromagnetic pulse, and their fancy computers will go to sleep. How do we deliver this pulse, he asked. Dr. Yang smiled. Remember, those old mining charges we still have in storage? The ones that use focused EM bursts to crack asteroids? With a few modifications. Meanwhile, the rest of the fleet prepared in their own ways. The clever Fox tested new fighter configurations, small ships built from escape pods and armed with whatever weapons could fit. The Iron Rabbit practiced using its mining lasers as weapons, finding they could cut through armor much faster than expected. The Hanji's Wisdom, commanded by Commander Mi Young Seo, worked on communication tactics. They would be the ones leading the Etherians into the trap, so their acting would need to be perfect. Remember, Mi Young told her crew, we're not running because we're scared. We're running because we want them to follow us. Lieutenant Colonel Ji Wan Bei's ship, the Ondal's Warmth, was perhaps the strangest member of the fleet. Built around a massive cargo hauler, it looked like a flying warehouse. But inside, teams were preparing something that would make the Etherians very unhappy. How many missiles fit in a cargo hold? Ji-Wan asked his weapons officer. Depends on how small we make them, sir. Make them small, make them many, and make them angry. As the days passed, the human ships began to look worse than ever. Paint was stripped to show rust underneath. Panels were left open to expose wiring. Steam vented from various places. To any observer, the human fleet looked ready to fall apart. But appearances were deceiving. Under that junk heap exterior, the fleet was becoming something dangerous. Weapons that shouldn't exist were being installed. Shields that defied physics were being powered up, and computers were calculating exactly how to turn the Etherians' arrogance into their downfall. Captain Daeho stood on his bridge looking at the tactical display. In 2 days, the Etherian fleet would reach the Proxima Belt. In 2 days, they would learn what human junk could really do. Sir, said Lieutenant Sun Hee Lee, all ships report ready for Project Magpie. Good, said Daeho. Tell everyone to get some rest. We're going to need it. He walked to the viewport and looked out at his fleet. The ships drifted in formation, looking like a collection of space garbage, but he could see past the disguise. These weren't just ships anymore. They were traps. They were surprises waiting to unfold, and in 2 days, Admiral Velthara would get the biggest surprise of her life. The human fleet began its journey to the Proxima Belt, looking like they were limping toward their doom. But looks, as the Etherians were about to learn, could be very deceiving indeed. Admiral Velthara stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Stellar Dominion. Around her, 31 other Etherian cruisers moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming like mirrors in the starlight. Each ship was exactly where it should be, no more than a meter out of place. Approaching the Proxima Belt, Admiral, reported her navigation officer. His voice had the musical quality all Etherians possessed. Excellent, Velthara replied. And the humans? Sensor readings show 15 ships in the belt, Admiral. They appear to be struggling. Velthara's 4 arms moved in what humans would recognize as satisfaction. Show me. The main screen lit up with images from the human fleet. The ships looked worse than before. The Handbox Pride was venting atmosphere from several places, leaving a trail of vapor behind it. The Clever Fox had scorch marks along its hull and was flying at an odd angle. The Iron Rabbit seemed to have lost half its exterior plating. They're falling apart, laughed Commander Telvanos, Velthara's second-in-command. Did they even try to repair their ships? Perhaps this is them trying, Velthara said with amusement. Helm, take us closer. I want to see these warships surrender properly. On the Handbox Pride, Captain Daeho Kim watched the Etherian fleet approach. They're taking the bait, he said quietly. All ships, continue the performance. Commander, Mi Young Seo's voice came through the comm system from the Hanji's Wisdom. Captain, we're broadcasting distress signals as planned, making it look like we're trying to escape. Good. Remember, panic, but not too much. We want them confident, not suspicious. Dr. Su Jin Yang looked up from her science station. The Etherians are scanning us heavily now, but the fake damage is hiding our real improvements. Lieutenant Sun Hee Lee, watching the tactical display, spoke carefully. "Sir, the Etherians are spreading out. Looks like they want to surround us." "Perfect," said Daeho. "Tell all ships begin the retreat. Make it sloppy." The human ship slowly turned away from the advancing Etherian fleet. The clever fox actually bumped into an asteroid, spinning wildly before its crew seemed to regain control. The handbox, Pride, accelerated unevenly, its engines sputtering. On the Stellar Dominion, Weapons Officer Karthus reported, "Admiral, human ships are attempting to flee. One of them collided with an asteroid." "How pathetic," Velthara said. "Increase speed, let's end this quickly." The chase led deeper into the asteroid belt. The human ships seemed to be panicking, each one flying its own course instead of staying together. They weaved between the large rocks awkwardly like children playing in a maze. Captain Dongwu An, hidden in his stealth ship Silent Hammer, watched from behind a large asteroid. His ship looked exactly like the rock it was hiding behind. "All ships in position," he broadcast on the human command frequency. "Spring loaded and ready." The Etherians pursued eagerly. Their ships moved with grace between the asteroids, following the fleeing humans. Admiral Velthara was enjoying herself. "Look at them run," she said. "They can't even flee properly." Her tactical officer spoke up. "Admiral, we're now 20 kilometers into the belt. The humans seem to be heading for that large cluster of asteroids. Ahead." "Trying to hide, no doubt," Velthara replied. "Launch fighters, let's flush them out." Small, elegant fighter craft poured from the Etherian cruisers like silver wasps from a hive. They raced ahead of the main fleet, closing in on the human ships. On the Ondal's Warmth, Lieutenant Colonel Jiwan Bei watched the approaching fighters through her viewports. Her ship looked like it was barely flying, pieces of hull plating dropping off every few seconds. "Not yet," she whispered to her crew. "Let them get closer." The fighters swooped in, preparing to disable the human ships. That's when everything changed. "Now!" shouted Captain Daeho Kim. The Ondal's Warmth suddenly stopped falling apart. Panels that had been hanging loose snapped into place. What everyone thought was a cargo hold opened like a flower, revealing dozens of missile tubes. A swarm of missiles erupted from the ship, each one no bigger than a trash can. The Etherian fighters, expecting slow human weapons, found themselves surrounded by hundreds of tiny angry explosives. "What?" began an Etherian pilot before his fighter vanished in a flash of light. The missile swarm tore through the fighter, formations like a storm through leaves. The Etherians had never seen weapons like these, small, fast, and impossible to track. "Impossible," Velthara shouted. "Where did they get such weapons?" Her answer came as the human ships revealed their true nature. The handbox Pride stopped venting atmosphere and powered up weapons that definitely hadn't been there during the scans. The clever fox straightened its flight path and opened fire with lasers that cut through fighter armor like it was paper. But the real shock came from the Taekwondo Spirit. The ship Captain Nam had disguised as a freighter suddenly shed its fake cargo containers. As they fell away, they revealed massive weapon batteries that immediately began firing on the Etherian cruisers. "Admiral!" screamed the tactical officer on the Stellar Dominion. The freighter was a battleship. "It's firing at our port flank." The first Etherian cruiser to take fire was the Moonlight Seeker. The human weapons hit its hull with devastating force. The ship's bioneural networks immediately began repairing the damage, but the humans had more surprises. Dr. Yang's special weapons fired next. These looked like mining charges, but they were loaded with a very specific electromagnetic pulse. When they exploded against Etherian hulls, the bioneural networks inside the ship suddenly went quiet. The Moonlight Seeker stopped moving. Its lights went out. It drifted like a dead thing in space. "What happened to the Moonlight Seeker?" Velthara demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. The ship's biosystems have completely shut down." Before she could respond, more human ships attacked. The Iron Rabbit fired its mining lasers, which cut through armor faster than any weapon should. The Hanji's Wisdom launched what looked like escape pods, but these pods exploded when they reached Etherian ships. Commander Telvano stared at his screens in horror. "Admiral, We're detecting massive power readings from the human vessels. Their reactors are running at impossible levels. Impossible levels. Over 120% capacity. Those reactors should have exploded. Velthara realized the truth with growing horror. We've been tricked. These aren't failed ships. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. The battle was turning into a disaster for the Etherians. Their perfect formations meant nothing in the asteroid field. The humans fought like wild animals, using the rocks for cover and launching attacks from unexpected angles. The silent hammer appeared from nowhere, firing weapons that shouldn't have existed. Captain Dong Wuan's crew had been busy during the preparations, loading their stealth ship with enough firepower to sink a cruiser. Where did they get such weapons? Velthara asked no one in particular. As if answering her question, Commander, Taemin Lee's voice came over the open broadcast channel. You asked where we got our weapons? We made them. From your leftover scrap. Another Etherian ship, the Gleaming Path, suddenly stopped responding to commands. Its bio-neural network had been hit by Dr. Yang's EMP weapons. The ship drifted helplessly, as human fighters swarmed around it. Admiral, said the weapons officer, his musical voice now cracking with fear. We've lost 6 ships. 6 more are disabled. Velthara couldn't believe it. Her perfect fleet was being torn apart by ships made of garbage. Ships that shouldn't even be able to fly were outfighting her best cruisers. How are they doing this? She whispered. The answer came as the trap closed completely around them. Every human ship had stopped pretending to be weak. The asteroid field suddenly seemed full of hidden weapons and fighters. What had looked like hiding places were revealed as carefully prepared ambush points. The humans had turned the entire asteroid field into one giant weapon, and the Etherians were caught right in the middle of it. Admiral Velthara realized with cold certainty that her perfect plan had become a perfect disaster. The humans hadn't been running away. They had been leading the Etherians exactly where they wanted them. All ships, she commanded. Emergency maneuvers. Try to break free of the belt. But it was too late. The jaws of the human trap had closed, and there was no escape. The species that built ships from junk was about to teach the Etherians a very expensive lesson about underestimating their enemies. Admiral Velthara watched her perfect fleet die around her. The Starlight Crown exploded in a ball of fire as human missiles overwhelmed its shields. The crystal wind drifted helplessly, its bio-neural networks dead from the human EMP weapons. 12 of her cruisers were already destroyed or disabled. Admiral, her communications officer called out. The Rising Dawn is requesting assistance. They're being boarded. Velthara turned to see human fighters swarming around one of her cruisers like angry bees. But these weren't normal fighters. They were construction pods, mining vehicles, even what looked like a garbage hauler, all armed and attacking with the fury of cornered animals. This is impossible, she whispered. How are maintenance pods penetrating military shields? Commander Telvanos, bleeding from a cut on his forehead, provided the answer. Admiral, human shields don't work like ours. They're not constant barriers, they pulse. And somehow they're timing their attacks between those pulses. On the Hanbok's Pride, Commander Taemin Lee grinned as he watched his modified weapons tear through Etherian armor. Sister, he called to Lieutenant Sun Hee Lee, remember when Velthara called our engineering creative? I remember, Sun Hee replied, launching another salvo at an Etherian cruiser. Turns out she was right. We are creative. The human ships moved through the asteroid field like they were born there. The clever fox dodged between rocks, using them as shields while firing from impossible angles. The iron rabbit had turned off its artificial gravity and was spinning like a top, bringing all its weapons to bear in a deadly dance. Captain Hyune Nam's voice crackled through the comm system. All ships focus fire on the Stellar Dominion. Let's give their admiral a personal invitation to surrender. The flagship of the Etherian fleet suddenly found itself the target of every human ship. Missiles, lasers, and plasma bolts converged on its position. But the Stellar Dominion wasn't helpless. Its shields flared to life, deflecting most of the attacks. Their flagship is tough, Lieutenant Colonel Jiwon Bei observed from the Ondol's warmth. Those shields are military grade. Then we'll just have to get creative, replied Captain Dae-ho Kim. Dr. Sujin Yang had been saving her best weapon for this moment. Captain, I have something special for the flagship, but I need to get close. How close? Very close. Dae-ho nodded. Take us in. The Hanbok's Pride began what looked like a suicide run toward the stellar dominion. The Etherian flagship fired everything it had at the approaching human ship. Plasma bolts and energy beams lit up space like a deadly fireworks show. But the Hanbok's Pride seemed to have a guardian angel. Every shot somehow missed by inches. The ship weaved and rolled, occasionally pieces of fake hull plating flying off to make it look like it was taking damage. Impossible, Velthara screamed. How are they avoiding our targeting systems? What she didn't know was that human pilots didn't fly by computers alone. They flew by instinct, by feeling, by pure human stubbornness. No Etherian computer could predict what a human would do next because humans themselves didn't always know. The Hanbok's Pride raced past the flagship's shields at the last second. As it did, Dr. Yang fired her secret weapon. It wasn't a missile or a beam. It was a small pod that looked like space junk. The pod attached itself to the stellar dominion's hull with magnetic clamps. Then it began transmitting. What did we just do? Asked Sun He. Dr. Yang smiled. I gave their bio-neural networks the equivalent of a computer virus, a very specific one. Alarms began blaring on the stellar dominion. The ship's weapon system started firing at random. Its engines sputtered. Lights flickered throughout the ship. Report, Velthara demanded. Admiral, our biosystems are malfunctioning. They're receiving conflicting instructions. The Etherian flagship began spinning slowly, completely out of control. Its weapons fired wildly into space. Several shots hit other Etherian ships. Captain Dong Wuan's stealth ship, the Silent Hammer, had been busy during the chaos. It had gotten close to 3 Etherian cruisers and attached boarding pods to their hulls. Now, human Marines and salvaged battle armor were cutting their way inside. These weren't normal Marines. They were miners, engineers, and maintenance workers who had volunteered to fight. They carried welding torches instead of energy swords, powered hammers instead of plasma rifles. This is Sergeant Wanho Park, came a voice through the comm. We're inside the Moonlight Seeker. The Etherians don't know how to fight in their own corridors. They're used to open space battles. The boarding parties moved through the Etherian ships like water through a sponge. The aliens' beautiful flowing corridors became death traps as humans used their own environment against them. Back in space, the battle was reaching its climax. Of the 32 Etherian cruisers that had entered the belt, 23 were destroyed, disabled, or captured. Only 9 remained functional, including the crippled flagship. Commander Mi-young Seo's Hanji's Wisdom had just finished capturing the Silver Dawn when the calls for surrender began. Human vessels, came a broken voice over the communications channel. This is Captain Sithara of the Cloud Swimmer. We surrender. More voices joined in. Ship after ship threw down their weapons. The proud Etherian fleet had become a broken collection of defeated vessels. Finally, Admiral Velthara herself appeared on the main screen. Her musical voice was shaky, her forearms trembling. Human fleet, she said slowly. This is Admiral Velthara. I request permission to speak with your commander. Captain Dae-ho Kim appeared on the screen. Behind him, the bridge of the Hanbok's Pride looked like a junkyard, exactly as it was meant to. I'm listening, Admiral, he said simply. Velthara looked at him for a long moment. Her mercury-like eyes reflected pain and confusion. How? She asked finally. How did you defeat us with such junk? Dae-ho finished for her. Is that what you were going to say? Velthara nodded weakly. Admiral, Dae-ho said, his voice patient but firm, you made 3 mistakes. First, you judged us by appearance. Second, you underestimated what we could do with limited resources. And third, you forgot something important. What? Humans didn't conquer space with perfect ships. We crawled out here in tin cans held together with wire and hope. We learned to make anything work because we had to. You gave us fancy technology and expected us to use it like you would. But we're not you. Dae-ho gestured to his crew. We don't build perfect ships because we don't believe in perfect. We believe in functional. We believe in improvisation. And we believe that the best tool is the one that works, no matter how ugly it looks. Lieutenant Sun Hee Lee added, "You called our engineering creative like it was an insult. But that's exactly what saved us. You can't fight creativity with perfection." Admiral Velthara stared at her former enemies. Around her, the crippled remains of her fleet floated helplessly. Then she did something no one expected. She laughed. It wasn't the pleasant musical laugh of before. It was bitter and full of understanding. "You are right," she said. "We came here expecting to fight our own reflection, perfect ships with perfect tactics. Instead, we fought something we didn't understand, something wild and unpredictable and—" She paused. "Creative. What happens now?" she asked. "Captain." Daeho looked at his officers, then back at the screen. "Now, Admiral, you learn. Some of your ships are too damaged to repair. Your crews will be treated well, but you'll be staying in human space for a while. As prisoners?" "As students," said Captain Nam, joining the conversation. "You wanted to know how we make impossible technology work? We'll show you. Maybe your people will understand that there's more than one way to reach the stars." Dr. Yang stepped forward. "And Admiral, that scanning you did at Kepler Prime? We scanned you too. We know your ships better than you think we do. Remember that if you ever consider attacking us again." Admiral Velthara nodded slowly. "I understand. We will send word to our empire the humans are not what we thought." The communication ended. Around the Proxima Belt, human ships moved to secure their prisoners and gather the scattered pieces of the Etherian fleet. 3 months later, Admiral Velthara stood in the rebuilt meeting room of Kepler Prime. But this time, she wasn't there to threaten. She was there to ask for help. The Etherian Empire, humbled by the loss of their invincible fleet, wanted to learn from the humans. They wanted to understand how junk could become weapons, how creativity could defeat perfection. Captain Daeho Kim, now promoted to Admiral, listened to their request with the same patience he had shown in defeat. "Admiral," Velthara said, her forearms moving in gestures of respect, "we wish to establish, what is your word, exchange programs. Our engineers would like to study with yours." Daeho smiled. "And what would we learn from you in return?" "Discipline," Velthara replied. "Order, organization. Perhaps together we can build something better than either of us could alone." "Better than perfect and better than broken," agreed Daeho. As the two admirals shook hands, all 4 of Velthara's with Daeho's 2, word spread through the galaxy. The humans had won more than a battle. They had won respect, and Admiral Velthara never again made the mistake of judging a ship by how shiny it looked. From that day forward, when aliens heard about human scrap ships, they didn't laugh.